Peace, y'all. Let's talk about it. Did we know that the Washington Times was writing about a black king in the 1900s? When we have been told we have been slaves for 400 years, they had a black king that was untouched by Europeans. And what I mean by untouched, he never been a slave, and he also can trace back what? His family members that never been slaves. So this slavery talk and what the things they have told us, y'all, man, is really crazy. But to know a black king was on the throne in the 1900s and they was writing about him, and they wasn't only writing, just some little small things about him. These was significant things, especially for a black man that has been taught that he have been enslaved by a white man for 400 years. So let's just read this little part right. It says, Menelik of Abyssinia, the most democratic of all monarchs. Now, why is Menelik connected to a monarch that's most democratic out of all monarchs? Because when you deal with the throne of David, when you deal with the Solomonic dynasty, when you deal with the throne that's in Ethiopia, you're dealing with the wisdom of God. This will put you above all monarchs. And it's crazy how we know nothing about this throne. We hear about it, but we truly don't know about it. It says, he was seriously ill, dispatches from the capital of his empire to Rome. And if he should die, an outbreak menacing the safety of European representatives would likely be followed by a fierce scramble among the powers for his rich domain. Now, if you know anything about Menelik, Menelik passed in 1913. World War I broke out in 1914. And not only did Menelik pass in December of 1913. World War I started in July, 7 months after. Because what? They had a scramble. The European powers scrambled for the rich domain in East Africa. So as you see, Menelik passes December 12, 1913. World War II, July 1914. So the newspaper was true. Now, if you was to read the newspaper, it go in a lot of details, some details about Menelik, and his history, and him fighting the Italians. And a lot of us don't know about the Italians invading Ethiopia and they losing to Menelik. And then they came back in 1925 and created, I don't really want to say a treaty, but some kind of invention where they began to control Ethiopia with foreign affairs and economic interests. So Ethiopians wasn't, and it's crazy how at that time they had a king. Why wasn't Haile Selassie over the foreign affairs or had or appointed someone to be over the foreign affairs and the economic interests? Why Haile Selassie didn't appoint that? Why Great Britain had to what? Appoint this? And like I said, when we get into this kind of talk, y'all, it's a whole nother discussion to truly understand what actually went down in these times. But very few people tend to care about the 1900s because we've been slaves and we haven't got out of slavery. That's what we've been told. But the whole 400 years, now the slavery history is true. We were slaves, but not like they told us, not like they showed us. Slavery didn't happen like that. Slavery didn't last for 400 years. When you're dealing with the slave trade, y'all, you're dealing with something that's not too long. You're dealing with something that started in the 1800s. That's a whole nother topic. But I just want to show y'all how America knew about the Solomonic dynasty, the throne in Ethiopia, and this stuff is in newspapers. If you don't believe, because we try to share this with a lot of our people, and they don't believe it. It's crazy. And again, here's another picture of Menelik. I know a lot of people be like, where does African Americans come from? We come from Africa. A lot of us come from East Africa. If you look at a lot of these pictures of these ancient kings who sat on the throne in Ethiopia, their identical features match the African Americans and a lot of the African diaspora of the scattered Africans all over the world. So here's an article again that gives more evidence how Abyssinians look identical to African Americans, aka what they call Ethiopia today. And we're not talking about modern Ethiopians, we're talking about the ancient. It says what? He was a giant in stature and jet black. As to his complexion, he spoke 2 words of English, but was accompanied by an interpreter. But for a bright red fizz, the Moor had, now Moors trace their roots back to Abyssinia. So a lot of people say America is built off Moor science. So the connection of Abyssinia and America goes way back. For those who got ears to hear. So he wore a fizz hat. There was nothing about his conventional attire to distinguish him from a Afro-American. Why is they putting this in this news article? That he, it's hard to distinguish him from an Afro-American because the Afro-Americans come from Abyssinia. So it says somehow or other he did not hit it off well at the State Department. He had been hurtled as a special ambassador from Emperor Menelik, but examination of his papers proved that he was a private citizen, a rich merchant who bore a letter from Menelik which declared in general terms, so again, it was all about Abyssinia doing commercial trade with United States. That's what the letter was about, to establish that. But I'm only, again, because we are being told that we come from America. Now, all this stemmed from us not knowing about this history. This stuff happened in late 1800s. We're not even talking about the 1600s. We're not talking about 1400s. We talking about stuff in the 1900s. And if you can't keep up with what happened in the 1900s, how the hell can you keep up with what happened in the 1400s, 1600s, 1800s? It's impossible. You missed the 1900s. So if you missed the 1900s, you missed everything. So it's crazy how this brother wore a fizz hat. That's deep, y'all. That's deep. But we're going to give you a picture of this brother. Look at this. Here's a picture of the brother. As you can see, man, these, when you talk about East Africans, y'all, you are talking about the African diaspora. That's where majority of slavery come from, East Africa. And this is something they have been hiding. And another gem, the transatlantic slave represent all slave trades, because the only way to get from Africa to the United States, you got to travel. You got to transport on the Atlantic. So the transatlantic slave trade represents all slave trades. And as always, we hope the Father has circumcised your hearts and ears for the message. Peace.